When Sam and Dean finally reunite with their dad, it seemed to make an unstoppable trio. However, that would be short-lived, as one fatal crash was about to change everything, which would leave Dean in a coma. This was the moment that changed everything, and here's why. Before we talk about John's deal with the devil, we need to go into exactly where this all started. To where Mary Winchester was killed by a yellow-eyed demon, and that same yellow-eyed demon would be tracked down for years and years by John Winchester. But when he goes missing, his sons go looking for him, and that's where we bring in Sam and Dean. Sam and Dean, at this moment in time, are literally coming back together in this ghost hunting, sacrificing their lives to try to find their father, which had just vanished out of nowhere and no updates since. When they finally do meet him, it seems to be all rosy with the odd occasional argument, but it seems to be back to where everything wants to be, fighting monsters side by side. But everything was about to change and they didn't even realise it. When Sam and Dean finally met with their dad, it seemed to be the reunion that we'd all expected and seemed to be something that the show could then build on. However, one fatal crash which involved a demon crashing into them, taking out the Impala and putting Dean in a coma, this was the serious moment that happened, which led the deal to eventually happen. Dean would be in a coma and would sadly die if there wasn't for a saviour. And John, being John and wanting to save his son, put his sons first because they were the only thing that he had left, because obviously Mary had passed away years ago thanks to the hands of the yellow-eyed demon. He decided to give up his soul and give the reins over to his sons to go and track down Mary's killer and let him have that peace of mind by selling his soul to a demon, which he does to save his son, which is a pivotal moment. But why is it pivotal? As Dean would start to punish himself for John's death, as John sacrificed his life for Dean, and Dean had no way of stopping John from doing that. His dad had already made that decision and Dean was in a coma. Sam wasn't around or was in a different room and didn't know this was happening either. So when this moment happened, it was significant, as this would mean that Dean would have to face these emotions of loss for the first time, and he didn't deal with it well at all. Losing the biggest figure in his life and one of the only family members that he had left, and he pushed all that emotion down. He didn't want to show any emotion in front of Sam, and Dean really got to feel that loss for the first time. And this would be a common theme throughout the show of him pushing his emotions down, not wanting to talk about it with Sam, showing this hard persona on the outside, but then breaking down in front of other people or breaking down on his own of these emotions that he was starting to feel. And even though John Winchester died, the brothers still stuck together and still was on that task of hunting down the yellow-eyed demon, putting to bed Mary Winchester's death and putting that all behind them. And what is interesting here is that John Winchester dying didn't do much for the legacy left behind, because he still left them a load of notes and things to take down any supernatural being. If you enjoy breaking down the exact moments where franchises, series has changed for either the better, for the worse, then don't forget to subscribe, as this is Everything Changed and you want to be alerted to our next episode. When John Winchester died, this seemed to be the end of the presence and guidance that he would bring to the two brothers. What was left was notes and books of years and years of his work trying to find the yellow-eyed demon. But the main thing that changed with this death was Dean's guilt. Dean's guilt only grew because he thought that he was responsible for John's death and pushed his emotions deep down and took most of that out on Sam. This moment might not be the most pivotal in the Supernatural show, but it seemed to be one of the very first times that we got to see where Dean and Sam had to deal with some kind of big grief that would be life-altering, and it was the first time that Dean really got to feel the struggles of this life that he was living. This was the moment that changed everything, and not for the better.